I've been jealous of your rack setup that you've got in your garage or whatever, your weights and stuff like that.
Dude,
I'm sure it's been clutch right now.
Dude, absolutely, man. And that was something that was kind of a risk too, because when I first got it was like at the beginning of the pandemic, and we don't know when this is gonna last or
Right.
when it's gonna go away. So my big worry was, am I gonna spend all this money on a home gym and then everything opens up again in another month?
2 months, everything
Yeah.
yeah, dude,
Right.
well, you paid off, bro.
Hell
for
yeah,
sure.
man. It's sick. The only thing I really need is I really need like a bench, like an adjustable bench, so I can really do like incline and decline
Gotcha.
and flat.
Gotcha.
It was really expensive at the time. That was only the downside, was that when I was looking into buying everything, it was like double the price. It was in high demand
'Cause everyone's trying to get it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, or it was all sold out. Like I became an enthusiast, bro. Like with all the workout equipment when I was like looking into buying stuff, and like the main ones is like Rogue, Titan Fitness, Rep Fitness.
Oh yeah.
And then there's like cheaper ones that you can like find on Amazon and like other websites, but those are like the big ones, and they would always be sold out on whatever I wanted, whether it was like a yoke or a squat rack or a power rack. Like I was just looking into whatever I could get. I was just trying to get something at a reasonable price. Like everything else was $1,000 plus for a power rack, and Titan. No, it was Rep Fitness in Colorado that had like really good workout equipment, and it was pretty like a good price, and it was like good reviews on everything. So I was like looking into it, and it was sold out, and it was like, we're gonna restock this day on these items, and I was like, okay, I set it on my calendar. They're gonna restock at 8 a.m. Like I'm gonna go on, I'm gonna log on quick, and I'm just gonna like add it to my cart and buy it. And I had like all my stuff, so that was like a month waiting for that. And then once the day dropped, everything sold out within like 30 minutes. And I couldn't get anything. So I was like, dude, this is insane.
Damn.
So I just had to settle with something from, I think it's like a cap squat rack from Amazon. And it wasn't too bad. It was like $200.
Okay.
And then,
Right on.
and then it was also a cap barbell, which was also around I think it was like 230. Well, I'm not too deep into it, so that was a good thing. I lucked out on the equipment that I need,
Sure.
And I'm not lifting like 500 plus pounds, so I don't need anything too crazy. It's just whatever I can do.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to upgrade later. I'll just resell it, but for now it's decent, man. So welcome to another episode of the Coast Boys Podcast. My name is Izzy. I'm joined by Gabe today, and today we're joined by Wallis. Wallis, how you doing, man?
Good, man. I'm good. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Dude, it's been a while since we've seen each other. We should probably just start with that, yeah? Like how we know each other?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. So it's 27. We were talking a little bit before we started, but in 2017, I played for a summer league team, which I think was in the UPSL, right? That was a league that team was playing in. Yeah, it was called the California Victory. And I think the team is still around right now, or I'm not sure, obviously with COVID and stuff, whether they were able to have a season this year. But,
I don't think so. I think they might start up next year, but they've been kind of like on and off ever since that season. That was the first season.
Gotcha. So I was living in, so I went to UC Davis. So I was living in Davis for the summer, and the team's based out of Petaluma. So I drive over there for training and stuff like that, and then go over for some games on the weekends. So it was great. Yeah, it was really, really, really fun group of guys. And that's obviously where I met Izzy, and we've kind of just sort of kept in touch ever since.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that was fun, man. I always talk about it, but it's such a fun experience because you kind of came in the second half of the season, and it was very interesting because with that team, everybody that was a part of the ownership or the coaching staff, they had connections with a lot of other coaches and a lot of players. So when you got brought in, it seemed kind of like towards the end of the season before playoffs, every game we would have new players, or we would have different players. We would, at the beginning, like we built a team around this one player that played Primera in Mexico. We built the team around it, and then and then he brought his friends, and then there was like half the team was ex-professional, all D1 players, and then some stuff happened towards the middle where they all backed out and they moved away. And then I think we only kept like 2 of those original Mexican players. And then every week after that, they started bringing in new players. And the same thing with the goalies. One of the players that had left was a goalie that had played for Pachuca. And then I think like the week after they left, we played in the Bay Area. and we brought like a player that used to play Fuerzas Básicas, was also a goalie for Chivas, a friend of one of the players that we had. So it just seemed like every week we had somebody new, until you came along, and then I think you just kind of kept going through that playoff run that we had, and eventually made it to that national championship where we took a L, unfortunately, to a really good LA Wolves team.
Yeah, they were a good team. It
was a really good team.
But yeah, no, I didn't actually know that you guys had such quality goalkeepers before. I'm glad I was kind of able to keep the level high when I came in. But yeah, no, it's really cool. I think the head coach at UC Davis, Dwayne Schaefer, his brother Don, was how I got connected with the Victory. But yeah, no, I mean, for me, I was looking for opportunity to go and play games, and I mean, especially as a goalkeeper, right? At that time, I hadn't played at all at Davis. So I redshirted and then pretty much sat my redshirt freshman season. So I was looking for opportunity to play games and stuff like that, and it ended up being really, really fun. And I don't know, I mean, one of the best parts about it for me was I was able to speak Spanish the whole summer. So like I lived in Chiapas for over a year growing up, and obviously I don't look like somebody who speaks Spanish, but like it was funny, like the first couple of day practices I was there, I was like kind of shy and quiet, and I can obviously guys are talking about me in Spanish, and eventually I had to say like les tengo que decir que les puedo entender, like I can understand what you guys are saying about me, and luckily like it was mostly like good stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
oh, no.
after that, it was just all Spanish. After that, so that was a really, really great experience.
Yeah.
To be around the game, and then to.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
No. That's just Go ahead.
I was gonna ask what made you move to Chiapas, or why were you over there for a year?
Yeah. So my dad is a high school English teacher, and my mom is a nurse. And my dad got a sabbatical from his job, basically where he gets the year off and get paid half his salary. So they both wanted. I have a younger sister, so they both wanted my younger sister and I to live in a different culture and to learn a different language. So yeah, I mean, I remember I got home from, it was like rec basketball practice, and my sister was like on the couch, like sad, crying. I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, we're going to Mexico next year. And I was like, shut up. No, we're not. And then my mom's like, yeah, we are. And then I was like, what? And at the time I was like, I'm afraid. I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to like miss out on all the stuff that's going on. But in hindsight, what is just such a huge sort of formative experience for me, like perspective altering. And then, the ability to speak Spanish has been really, really cool.
Absolutely.
I think.
How was it when you first got there? Was it a culture shock?
Yes, dude. It was a huge culture. Like I could count to 10 and like knew the colors from like elementary school Spanish in the United States, which is, as you know, like not that great.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean, my sister and I were the only like gringos at our school, and we basically had to learn. Otherwise, if we wanted to be able to communicate, we had to learn, which is actually like hard in the beginning, but a really, really great way to learn. And when you're young too, you pick it up so much easier than when you're older. But that's actually where I started playing goalkeeper. Was I was walking around with my dad. I wanted to find a team to play on. We were walking around to the park after school, and there's like this fenced off field, and these guys were playing, and they invite us in and stuff like that. And at the time, the only soccer shirt I had was El Tri Osvaldo Sanchez goalkeeper jersey. That was like the only. So I was wearing that, of course, and I get there and I'm like a head taller than everybody else, and I'm like the güero, and they're like portero. And then ever since then, I've been playing in goal.
That's so funny.
But yeah, no. So that's
that's interesting, because I didn't realize that you didn't have any game time when you came over to Victory. Like you wouldn't have known, like especially Don was like hyping you up to be this really good. You were like, I'm just gonna say that you're a really good player, but he was like, no, this guy's amazing, guys. Like the first game you played with us was in San Jose. He's like, this guy's amazing. He's gonna go pro. We're like, okay, lit. And that game you ended up like winning the game.
I think I saved a penalty that game.
Yeah, you blocked the PK that game. It was quite a debut. But that's
that was we were playing like at the San Jose like police league field in like downtown San Jose, right underneath the highway.
Yeah, it was super sketch. But it was a good game, fun times.
No, Don's a great salesman, so I'm glad he was singing my praises before I got involved. But yeah, no, I mean, like I was out of high school. I think I could sort of get into it. Like, so in high school, like September 1st of your junior year is when coaches can start contacting you via email. At least that was the rule at the time when I was kind of going through the recruiting process. And I had been kind of like trying to send emails to coaches and like put myself out there, like playing for an okay club team out of Seattle at some tournaments. And I was like, I can't wait. I'm going to wake up September 1st, my junior 11th grade year. And I'm going to have all these emails. I'm going to decide where I want to go to play college soccer and like keep it going on. And then of course, like I wake up in the morning and my inbox is empty. So I like refresh the page and like turn the modem on
Like,
and
there
off.
must
And
be a
still
problem
no
here.
emails.
Yeah, like what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. It's like something's got to be wrong.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I just was sort of under the radar. And I mean, I think like at the time I was going through the recruiting process, it was a lot like if you played an academy, like certainly to play Division I, that was an easier path. And I don't think all college coaches operate this way, but certainly a lot like rely on the academy to get good players, which is smart, right? Like you've got a system here that's identifying the best players in an area. Let's just sort of rely on the legwork that they've done to bring those players in. But I think with that, sometimes players fall through the cracks, and I was kind of one of those guys. So yeah, the only opportunity I had to keep playing soccer was to come to Davis. So I had an opportunity to come as like a preferred walk-on. So no scholarship money, but a roster spot my true freshman year.
Okay. And was that really your only option? Was Davis?
Yeah, bro, that was like literally it. I can remember so I'm sitting in my room at home right now in Seattle, and like literally the same spot I'm sitting. I remember like talking to my parents. I think it was the summer going. It was like July of the summer before my senior year, and I was like, like I just want you guys to know, like if this doesn't happen, it's gonna be okay. Like I'll figure something out, because they knew it was something that I really wanted to do, but at the time it's just like nothing was happening. And even like some Division III schools that I had got in touch with that had showed some interest, they were like, yeah, we're not gonna bring you in, or like stuff happens. Like they find somebody else, or somebody they had in the year before was better than they thought.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. So like I had played at a tournament in. Trying to think what the name of the tournament is, but I don't know if you've ever played at those fields that are right next to Levi's Stadium where they built the 49ers Stadium. It's like Santa Clara Sporting is the club.
Like the Danville.
No, like right in Santa Clara, like next to the football stadium. The fields might be gone now, but we played in a tournament there, and that's where Davis saw me, and then we sort of stayed in touch over the next couple of years. And then I came to a camp in that summer before my senior year. They saw me play at the camp. We went back to that tournament. They saw me play then. And then they basically gave me the offer. And so that was like the week before high school started, and I had like a week in high school where I was like, everyone around me was like stressing out about where they were going to go to college and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I have an opportunity to kind of lock it in and know what I want to do. So I'm going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
before you said yes, did you know going in, obviously Davis is a D1 school, like, did you kind of have this feeling, man, maybe I won't get as much playing time as I'm hoping for, but you're just kind of like hoping that maybe something will come from it? Or what was your mentality going into it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think like I wanted to be a small fish in a big pond versus a big fish in a small pond. Like I wanted to play at the highest level I could. And even if that meant that I had to like ride the bench for a while and like kind of pay my dues and start at the bottom of the depth chart and kind of work my way up. Like, no, I mean, at that point, I was just like kind of happy to have an opportunity. Like I went from thinking like, this might be it for soccer to like, okay, I have an opportunity to play. So I didn't really have any expectations in terms of like what I was going to do. They were like generally freshman redshirt, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to come in and start. But when it didn't happen, I wasn't like, okay, this is over. I was sort of just like, all right, time to sort of recalibrate and how can I maximize where I'm at right now as a redshirt at the time.
Mm. Were there any other schools that you were looking at or aspiring to play at?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to play like the University of Washington was one where I was able to kind of communicate a little bit with Jamie Clark, the head coach, and Rich Reese, the goalkeeper coach, and it just they brought somebody in who was the same sort of high school graduation year as I, and he at the time was a better player. So they were like, we could maybe try to work something out, but I don't know. I think like coming in the same class as somebody else who's sort of the coach's guy, sort of the writing was on the wall, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I had never heard of Davis before, bro. Like, to be honest, I'd never heard of it. Like, outside of California, it's crazy. Like, people don't know about it that much, which is kind of shocking because it's such a great place. But yeah, I was like, okay, I like looked on the website and I'd been there 2 days for the camp, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Which in hindsight was like, maybe I should have done like a little bit more research, but I would say like it turned out really well because the things I didn't know about Davis when I went there turned out to be the things that I like the most about it.
What was your first impression
in that sense of Davis?
Yeah, of Davis.
Well, we went in the summertime for the camp, so it's like obviously really, really hot. But I can always remember like flying into the Sacramento airport. You come down low, and there's like all the farms. There's like the farms, and they're growing, I think, rice and stuff. And so it's beautiful. Like I think it was like an evening flight, so the sun was setting, and I was like, wow, this is such a nice place to live. And Davis in the summer is cool because the campus is like pretty empty. And we stayed at like the hotel that's on campus, and we would literally like ride bikes from the hotel to the field for the camp and then back. So I can remember like being there, and the coach was like, where did you get the bikes? And I'm like, they had them at the hotel. But so early on, I didn't know that Davis was a biking place, but I guess I got initiated into biking early.
That's awesome. And what did you major in?
So at Davis, I studied global disease biology, which is like kind of public health sort of centered, and then Chicanx studies. So those were my two fields of study.
Right on, man. Was that something that you always wanted to do, like growing up, or was it something that you went into Davis and you were undeclared and kind of found a path that way? Or how did that kind of come into fruition?
Yeah, so one of the reasons like I think I was kind of able to sort of convince my parents to like let me give it a shot at Davis was I knew that I was interested in public health, or that I had like a sort of a rudimentary interest in it. And my freshman year at Davis was the first year of this global disease biology major. So I thought, wow, like this is a cool new program. It'd be fun to be be part of the start of something. So I actually like when you filled out the UC app, you could pick a major, and that was the major. So I came in declared as that.
Okay.
And then Chicanx studies was something like I took intro to Chi studies, and I was like, wow, this is like really, really cool. Like obviously like I have a connection to Mexico because of the time that I lived there and stuff like that. And being able to speak the language, but also just sort of this like the social justice aspect of it was another thing that I'm passionate about, and you got to learn a lot about that in different ways in the courses that I took.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting because a lot of people don't really realize that when you're able to speak more languages, it's like you unlock a whole new world. You're able to communicate with more people and really
100%.
understand other perspectives as well. I feel sometimes it's something that we bilingual people kind of take for granted. But I was going to ask, what was like your overall experience like there at Davis?
Really, really good. I mean, I think like what I liked about Davis was, I mean, the size of it can be kind of daunting. And when you look at it and you're like going to class, like a 400-person class, and you're seeing all these people every day. But with size comes like with a lot of opportunities. So I was able to get involved in like working at a lab at the vet school. I worked for the athletic departments, like checking tickets at the game. And just in like all the different things that you're involved in, you kind of form these small communities. So like I have my like student athlete community, my community of people who I work with doing research, my community of people who I studied Chicanx studies with, the people who were part of my major. So that kind of helped me make sort of the big school feel sort of smaller, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it was great. And then the soccer aspect of it was obviously really, really great. I mean, it put me in a spot to keep playing, which is what I always wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, you played college soccer for a while. I think you understand, like when you're part of a team like that, you're together all the time. Just on a personal level, the connections and bonds you make with guys are really, really great. So it's just cool to be able to like go through my phone and be able to text a bunch of guys who I played with and keep relationships going. So that's definitely like one of the best parts of it for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the bonds you make, man, are special. They're special.
Yeah, bro. I mean, look at us. Like, bro, 3 years later, I'm going on Izzy's podcast.
Yeah, that's sick, man. It's so cool, dude. It's so cool. I was going to ask, it's so interesting because you, like you just explained, kind of going into college, it was kind of a big risk to go to Davis and try to walk on. And for those that don't know, you got drafted to go pro. So where was the shift? You know, whether it's mentality or whether it's like your game that evolves, but like when does that kind of start coming to the back of your head? Like, oh, well, I can make a career out of this. I can go pro. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, like I think I realized later than some of the people who were around me. Like I give a lot of credit to Jason Hoteling he's associate head coach, but he also works with the goalkeepers. And like I can remember like working the camps. Like my before my redshirt sophomore, before my redshirt junior, before my redshirt senior year, like working the ID camps, and Jay would be there and he'd be saying to parents like, this is Wallis and he's got so many years left, but after that he's gonna be playing in the MLS. And at the time I was like, okay, come on, like you're kind of putting the sell job on for the parents or whatever, but like he for one really, really believed in me and like believed that I could do it. And it's something that I feel like super, super fortunate for, because I think obviously like you can't make anything happen unless you believe it yourself. But sometimes it takes somebody else believing in you for you to kind of realize like, okay, maybe I can do this. And then sort of in turn believe in yourself. So he was a big part of it for sure. But then, yeah, I mean, I knew that my goal was going into college was to keep playing for as long as I can. And then in college, I was like, well, okay, let's see if I can keep playing after college. So I was literally like, well, Dave's just kind of an under the radar school. I'm kind of an under the radar guy. Like, how can I get my name out there? So I literally like would go on MLS websites and like, so they don't give coaches emails out on MLS websites for obvious reasons, right? Because you'd have like people like me bothering you all the time, like, hey, can I come train, whatever. Yeah, exactly. But what they do, and I guess I'm going to kind of put the secret out for some people if they take advantage of it, but okay, it's not that big of a deal, is they put emails for like the ticket guy. So if the ticket guy's name is Matt Jones at whatever, portlandtimbers.com, and his name is Matt Jones and his email is mjones, then that's like how the emails are set up. So if the goalkeeper coach's name is John Smith, then I'm like, well, it's probably J Smith at portlandtimbers.com. So that's how I like got in touch with a lot of places. And then I had a family friend of a friend of a friend who worked for Minnesota United. That was the first place I went and trained in the summertime. And through like a chain of emails, like 10 people later, all of a sudden I'm in touch with the goalkeeper coach. And he's like, yeah, sure, come. So I went there, was able to stay with my grandparents and stuff like that. So yeah, I tried to sort of reach out to places where I had like people I could stay with and then go train. So I ended up going to like to Minnesota, to Houston, to North Carolina FC in the USL, to Portland. When
you're going to train with them, that's over the summer when you're at school?
Yeah, so Minnesota and North Carolina, I did in the summertime. Minnesota, I went for 2 summers. And then Houston, I went right after the fall quarter, so winter break. And then Portland, I went during spring break. So yeah, I would just like, I would send them like, here are the dates that I'm going to be not in school. Like, can I come train? And some people wouldn't respond. And some people were like, yeah, sure, come. And then I think like, I mean, you guys I'm sure understand this, but like soccer is such a small world that like everybody knows everybody. Yeah. And it just, so the Houston Dynamo coach told me a great thing. His name is Paul Rogers, he's the goalkeeper coach there. And he said like, there's a list of names of American goalkeepers. And he's like, all you got to do really is get yourself into that conversation, that list of names that people are talking about. Now, not all those lists are going to go pro, but if you're in the conversation, people know who you are, that it sort of instantly gives you some credibility, right? And for better or for worse, I think there's a lot of great players who don't continue on because people don't know who they are and they don't have somebody credible to vouch for them. Yeah. And what somebody views as credible or not credible is obviously subjective. So that was my kind of goal with that was A, like getting involved in professional environments and learn as much as I can about goalkeeping, but B, just by process of like being there, I didn't even necessarily have to do great, but just by being there, I kind of was able to get my name out there. People were like, oh yeah, like we know Wallis, he came here, or oh, I know Wallis, I know they went to Portland or whatever. And now all of a sudden, like, I'm not just like some nobody. I'm like, they sort of know who I am.
Yeah, just got to get your foot in the door.
Exactly, bro. Exactly.
What were like some of the main differences when you do go train with professional programs, like compared to somewhere like Davis?
Well, I mean, obviously, like the level is obviously higher. I think the speed of the play, the speed of the game is definitely quicker. I think like the attention to detail is obviously as you go up in level, the attention to detail rises up. Like, and that was helpful for me because I was kind of able to see like, okay, like if I'm building out and I play to my center back's back foot, that takes him a split second longer to get the ball in front of him, and now that's whatever, half a second turns into a second, and now we can't build out and we're getting pressed, we turn the ball over, and now we're defending. So either like watching guys in terms of like what they did in those situations, or even like before and after practice. Like that was definitely the biggest takeaway is like, so I go to Minnesota and like either Bobby Shuttleworth or Vito Minone, who played in the Premier League, played for Arsenal and stuff like that. I'm like, well, what's he doing before training? What's he doing afterwards? and let me see if I can pick and choose those things and try to incorporate that into my own routine. Because one thing I realized, like the higher level you go up playing wise, the smaller the slice of the pie is the time that you spend on the training field. Like you're spending more and more time before and after practice, like either recovering or getting yourself ready to train. But like pros, like these guys don't really train that much like during the season, right? Like the day before the game is super light. The day after the game is probably a day off. The day after the game is like regen for the guys who played. And then maybe you have 1 or 2 sessions and then you're getting ready to play another game. So those kind of like managing your body, managing your load and stuff like that were big takeaways for me for sure.
Okay. So, that's during the summer when you're at school. When you start kind of realizing, okay, I'm going to go pro, do scouts come to the games? Do you just kind of get on the radar by going there to train in the summers? Like when does that MLS draft kind of come into the radar? What was that looking like during season?
Yeah, like again, I didn't really realize, like I think it was a sort of like the summer. So the summer before my senior year, I got invited back to Minnesota based on like having a good successful season my junior year. Like they saw me play somehow. And I don't know if they came and saw me play or they saw me on video or whatever, but they're like, we'd like you to come back. And then through the goalkeeper coach there, I got involved with the PDL team in Iowa. So they call it Des Moines Menace, which had been, I guess, a pretty successful PDL team. So I played there too. So that's sort of another place, right? Another sort of little credibility thing, another thing to put on the resume, even though like I went and didn't play a single game, like, which was disappointing for what was obviously disappointing. But again, I think it was a great experience in Des Moines because we were living in apartments and like literally it was like get up, train, and come back. So it was like a real professional sort of experience. And I was like, look, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I said to myself, like, if I love every minute of like living in these like not so great sort of rundown apartments in Des Moines and training on this sort of 110 degree like cruddy high school turf field and then not playing in games, and then I thought to myself like, okay, then I think I'm ready to like actually like go for it. You know what I mean? Because I think like it's one thing to say like, oh, I want to be a professional soccer player, but you have to like really, really want it, not just sort of say you want it. So yeah, that experience sort of like, okay, I think I have a shot at doing this. But then I got some really good advice so Ona Power was a guy who played at UC Davis for a while, for 2 years, and graduated a little bit before I did. But then he went on to play at Reno in the USL, and now is playing overseas. But one thing he said to me is like, you got to reach out to agents, because just like you get your name out there talking to coaches, it's the same thing kind of with agents. So I literally like Googled soccer agent USA and like went through websites, and obviously some places you can tell are like not real, and some places are like more credible just based on the guys who they represent. Yeah. So yeah, and then they all have contact forms, right? So like contact us. So I literally would say like, hi, my name is Wallis. I'm graduating this fall and hoping to pursue a professional career and looking for some potential representation. Here's my video, like get in touch with me if you're interested. So I sent like 15, 20 of those emails to different places. And then yeah, like right before my senior year, the season started, I got a couple places reached out and then was kind of in conversations with them over the phone and stuff like that, trying to figure out like what's going to be the best fit and stuff like that. And then through that experience, you're kind of able to learn a little bit more like it. So when the end of the season came and it was like time to like sign with somebody, I kind of had an idea of like who I was comfortable with and what sort of would make sense going forward.
Gotcha. Did you have any friends that were playing professional that would kind of refer you to their agents or a certain agency?
Yeah, so I had a buddy, Ben Willis, who played at Gonzaga, who played for a couple years with RGB, the Dynamo USL affiliate. So he put me in touch with his agents. But yeah, I mean, mostly look, I think the advice that I would give if it's to somebody in that position is to, one, like understand that like you want the agent to want to represent you, because I think there's a lot of agents who will happily take your money, but like not be that motivated or interested in representing you. So for me, it was a big deal. Like people were reaching out to me and asking like, what are you thinking? Like who's talking to you and stuff like that? Because I sort of knew and sort of gauged that as like, they're interested in working with me, then there's some desire on their part. And it's kind of a two-way street, not versus just like kind of all me motivating the whole thing. So yeah, and then I spoke to also Ramon Martin del Campo was the guy who played at UC Davis. He played last season for Las Vegas Lights and OKC Energy. He was another guy I talked to kind of about his experience and stuff like that. Quincy Amarikwa, another UC Davis guy. So yeah, I had lucky sort of to tap into my network like that in terms of getting guys experience with certain agencies, experience with just agents in general. So yeah, that was kind of my base of knowledge that I tried to draw from.
Do
Can you
agents
talk a
kind
little
of
bit more? Oh, go on.
no go for it.
I just want to say, do you want to talk a little bit more about like how agents work? Do they get a cut up front, or is it something that they get paid after you sign with somebody, or how does that work?
Right. So I can kind of, I guess, really only speak to the specifics of my arrangement. So how it works is like 5% of my salary is the agent's commission. So however much I make, I pay him 5%. But I don't pay him anything until I have a contract. And I would say like I would be really, really wary of anybody who's asking for money before you sign. If you're a young sort of potential professional prospect, because that's somebody who's either one unprofessional and probably does not have your best interest in mind.
Gotcha.
Most of the time.
Gotcha.
Would you say that agents kind of work as advisors as well, like helping you navigate that or even break into that professional environment?
For sure. I mean, I think like for a young player, what an agent does is it's like a foot in the door somewhere, right? Like hopefully you have an agent who's got really good connections, which I've been fortunate to have, and can speak to clubs on your behalf and stuff like that. I mean, I think like obviously like the draft is a little bit different, right? Because the team that drafts you has your rights, so you kind of have to sign with them. So there's not a lot of opportunity for your agent to sort of pick and choose a team if you get drafted. But yes, I think so. Like in my situation right now, I was released from New York Red Bulls. Now my agent was able to start advocating on my behalf, and now I'm sort of really able to see the benefit of having somebody who's connected and stuff, because he's able to get in touch with places that I probably wouldn't have been able to, or he has prior relationships with somebody, and all of a sudden, it's just a lot easier that way.
Yeah. Before you guys, like you just mentioned, the whoever drafts you has your rights. Do you have to sign something like kind of agreeing to that? Like whoever drafts you, like okay, you're basically signing it away, your rights.
I think so. I don't know. I'm not. So I signed a contract with my agent, but you're sort of asking like, do I sign something agreeing to?
Yeah,
play
like
for the team?
when you enter the MLS draft, is there something you have to sign, like an agreement you have to sign?
No. So that's just the way it is, and I think there's a lot of people who maybe think that's the wrong way about it. Like it's kind of unfair for the player that your rights are kept by the team, because the team actually keeps your rights for 2 years, regardless of whether you sign with them. So like for me right now, if I want to sign, or an MLS team wants to sign me, they first have to buy my rights from New York.
Interesting.
Even though New York chose to release me and not pick up my option for next season.
Gotcha. Dang, that's interesting.
Which if it's preventing you from opportunity and having a job, it like really stinks. But again, it's sort of just the way that it is.
Yeah. Talk about that. Talk about the MLS draft and when you signed up, or I don't know if you signed up for it. I don't know if they just call you and tell you that you're included in the draft. Like talk about the whole process, before, during, after, the way you went about the move and everything. Yeah.
So like I tried to kind of, during the season, so fall of 2019, I tried to sort of stay in the moment as much as possible, just because I knew like the better I do and the better our team does, the better my chances are of continuing to play. So I was just trying to handle business in terms of that and be in the present, not so much in the future. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so basically how it works is in years past, there'd been like a week-long combine in Orlando, but so it's the MLS Combine, and to that you get invited to it and stuff like that. But starting last year, they sort of changed it to just a weekend event. They call it the MLS Showcase instead, which you had to be invited to. So as soon as we lost our first round NC2A tournament, came to Louisville, which was really disappointing, obviously. But then the next day I woke up and had an email saying that I'd been invited to that. So that was it made me feel a little bit better about losing. So yeah, I went to the combine there, and how that works is like all the clubs have scouts there, and you do a training session, 2 training sessions, and you play a match. And that's and that's it.
What do the training sessions look like?
Pretty basic. Like, so there were two other goalkeepers there. So we did a goalkeeper session, like nothing major, just more like a warm up and stuff like that. And then we played small sided and then box to box. That was the training session in the evening. And in the morning we did like physical testing was the first training session. So like, I think like 40 yard dash, vertical jump, and then like a lateral quickness thing.
What was your time? What was your 40 time?
I would be embarrassed to say I'm not that pacey, but and they actually didn't tell us what they were, and because I was curious, I actually spent a good amount of time training, but I don't know. I think I was faster than the other two goalkeepers, but I mean, that's just, it could be totally me. Just
okay. Can you talk about that? You said you trained beforehand, so you knew what they were going to be training you on and looking for.
Yeah. So yeah, you know what the test, so it's a 5-10-5 lateral quickness, a 40-yard sprint, and then a vertical jump. So like, look, I think it's not like the NFL combine where like, if you run a 4.4 versus a 4.3, that's like $10 million worth difference in that time. There's so much less put on those numbers in the MLS, but also like it doesn't necessarily hurt to do well in those things. Like so Roy Boateng, who's a year older than me at UC Davis, and also was playing for New York Red Bulls this past season. He went to the combine and just crushed it. Like he was fast. He was the fastest. And he had the highest vertical, and he was in the top 5 in the lateral quickness. And that, I think, helped him out. Ultimately, he got picked, I think, 16th overall or even higher. I'm not sure. Jeez. But so that was my kind of mindset. I was like, well, I know I'm going to do this. I'm going to put in a little bit of work to try and get better at it. So I had an opportunity, like we have at Davis, there's like the head strength and conditioning coach, and then he has a group of assistants who sort of work with different teams. And Doug Coleman is the guy who works with men's soccer. When I was there, and I just went to Coach Coleman, I was like, look, this is what I have to do. Can you help me get ready? And he'd had a lot of experience working with NFL guys when he was coaching at Missouri. So he sort of was able to sort of structure our like 3.5 weeks, a month of a training camp to prepare me for those tests and just to get me ready physically to perform well when I got there.
Mm. So after the combine, do people reach out to you? Do they let you know where you're projected? How does that work?
So yeah, one interesting part of the combine is like you actually can have interviews with teams. So like you obviously they have your phone number and stuff when you get there. So you just be like sitting in your room and you'll get a text and be like, you need to be down in the lobby in 5 minutes. You have a meeting with whoever. So I met with a few teams at the combine, Red Bull being one of them. So that was like kind of a sense of like, okay, like maybe these teams are like sort of interested. And then, yeah, I mean, there's like projections that like get put on MLS.com or whatever, like mock drafts and stuff. Mm. So, but those are, I think, written by a journalist or something like that, who obviously maybe isn't part of like the inside conversations. Yeah, but like I was projected like pretty high in those mock drafts. Obviously at the time you're like, well, I'm not going to put too much stock in them. But of course, like I was reading every single thing that was out there. And like I saw the name like, oh, this is pretty quick. Yeah. I was like, this is awesome. Like get picked in the first round or like whatever. And then obviously you have your agent kind of like speaking to clubs on your behalf and stuff like that. And he's sort of telling you who's interested. So yeah, I actually had like a few teams who were like, look, we're really interested, but we don't think you're going to get out of the first round. So if you're around, we'll pick you and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that's great. Like if I get picked in the first round, sweet. If not, then these teams will pick me up. But for whatever reason, like I didn't get picked in the first round and it came down to a couple teams that had said for sure, if you're there, we'll pick you. And they didn't pick me. And then all of a sudden, like, I went from like, wow, I'm going to get picked in the first round to be like, wow, I don't know if I'm going to get picked at all. Yeah. And how it worked for the draft was like, so the first round was on ESPN. So I'm literally like watching on the computer in my kitchen with my mom, my sister, and a buddy of mine. My dad was at work, thankfully, because I think everybody at one time would have been like too stressful, especially like as longer it went on. So the first round was on like the whatever on ESPN, so we were watching. But then after that, the broadcast just ends. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just literally go on the MLS website, and after that, they're just putting up picks as teams pick them. So literally, like I refresh the page once, my name's not there. Refresh the page again, my name's not there. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm not like, all right, I'll refresh it one more time. And then I look through, I'm like, oh, I got picked. So initially, it was just relief. Like I thought that I was gonna go higher or whatever, but now I'm just relieved. that I got picked. But then
Yeah.
like after like 5-10 minutes, it sort of started to sink in. I'm like, wow, like I'm gonna have a chance to keep playing and to make a little money doing it. And it was
Yeah.
obviously really exciting.
You're like, it's game time now. Now the
Yeah,
work
yeah. I was
starts.
like, time to work. Exactly.
Dude, that's awesome. Did you have any preferences or any teams like that did speak to you? Like, oh, we're gonna definitely if you're around, we're gonna pick you. Did you have any teams that you're like, oh, I'd love to go there?
Um, I mean, not really. I was just like anywhere would have been great.
Mm.
Anywhere would have been great. Like obviously, I love California, so it would have been great to stay in California. I'm from Seattle, so if it had worked out to stay in Seattle, stay close to home. That would have been nice. Um, but yeah, no, New York was ended up being a great fit. Like just sort of serendipitously, my aunt and uncle lived 15 minutes from the training facility there, so I lived with them all of last year, which was really nice.
That's awesome.
Um, but yeah, I didn't have a super set preference. I was just like, look, whoever's gonna give me an opportunity, I'm gonna hopefully make them feel glad that they did.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good mentality to have too. Very
Yeah.
positive. So okay, so after that, you see that you got drafted. Do you kind of wait around for somebody to give you a call? Does your agent call you? Like, what's the next step from there? Like, how do you make that move to New York?
Yeah, so the day of the draft, like after the draft, like I speak to the head coach and the GM and stuff like that, like a brief conversation, and then later on in the day, like the director of ops gives you a call and sort of starts to get the process going and sort of to like get your flight booked out for preseason and stuff like that, and kind of give you some more details about what it was going to be. So yeah, like I think like basically a week and a half after the draft, I was on a flight to New York, and then I got there, spent like a couple nights in the hotel, sort of getting settled, and then we went to preseason. The first team went to preseason down at IMG Academy in Florida.
Okay.
So that's how it works. Is like when you get drafted, you go into at least the first start of this first part of preseason you do with the first team.
Okay. And how was that?
Really, really great. I mean, like again, I was super fortunate to go to Davis, where we have a pretty good setup. Obviously, there's some better setups in terms of amenities at the Division One sort of collegiate soccer level, but like it's awesome. Like when I got like the food is so great or whatever, and then you have guys who are like complaining a little bit about the food. I'm like, are you guys kidding? Like this food is awesome. Like I can have as much as I want, and but it was great. So yeah, I was just doing double days. So it's pretty much just sort of soccer all the time, or recovering from, or getting ready for the next session in between. But it was great. It was great, and I was able to do kind of well enough where like they had other guys in on trial too. So like I think I got there, they had somebody from another goalkeeper from Leicester City on trial, and I was like, oh great, like I got drafted, and now I got to go up against a guy who's been playing in a Premier League academy, but was able to do well enough where I got to stay, and he had to go home, and then they had somebody from who'd been playing for America and or in the America Academy, and they brought him in, and again I got to sort of stick around. So I can remember having a conversation with like, the goalkeeper coach. And I was sort of like, well, how I've been doing? He's like, well, if you've noticed, like people have come in and left, and you're still here, so that's a pretty good indication that it's been going at least okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that felt good for sure, and got an opportunity to stay involved with the first team. When we came back to sort of the New York, New Jersey area for a week, and then they went again to Arizona for like their second preseason camp, and I got to go along for the first week of that, and then I flew back to New York to join the USL team for their like preseason training camp in Richmond, Virginia.
So when you make
that was
that,
kinda
that
like-
switch from the first team to the second team, do they have a conversation with you? Do they sit you down and like, listen, this is the direction we're going to go in, or how does that work?
Yeah, so essentially how it worked is, so when I was drafted, they had two goalkeepers signed to the first team, and so I was like, great, like opportunity for me to come in and be a number 3 for the MLS team. But during the time that we were in Florida, it came out that they were signing a European goalkeeper to the MLS team. So that sort of bumped me down from potentially signing an MLS deal to probably definitely signing a USL deal. So yeah, no, they were really upfront about like this is the situation, but you've been doing well. We want to keep you around, etc. So basically, I was with the first team until the European guy came in, and then once he came in, that's when I sort of moved out to the USL team.
So you hadn't signed anything yet.
No, so dude, I was on. That's another part of like the rights thing. Like when you get drafted in January, I was on like maybe like a 5 or 6 week trial essentially. So
Gotcha.
for 5 or 6 weeks after the draft, like I'm pretty much playing for free and on trial, so nothing's guaranteed. So like you could have smashed it for 5 weeks, but on the first day of the 6th week you get hurt. Well, they're probably not going to sign you if you get hurt. So at the time, I wasn't really thinking like too much about it, but looking back at it, I'm like, wow, like that's a long. Because it sort of comes down to like where you sort of feel you can sort of feel like every day there's like so much riding on it. But for me, I was just sort of like in the moment and just like enjoy it and like have as much fun as I can and learn as much as I can. Which for me, I think is like the best way to sort of approach like sort of stressful or high pressure situations. Just like, well, this is going to be hard, obviously, but like let me see how much I can get out of it and how I can gain out of it. So even if I succeed or fail, I'm still taking something from it moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And during those 5 to 6 weeks that you're basically on trial, do they offer you like a place to stay? Like, is your stuff paid for, or how does that work?
Yeah, no. So they take care of you for sure. I was just staying with my aunt and uncle because that's what I had chosen to do. But so how it works is like, at least in New York, the club owns a few houses. So that's where they put up players who are on trial, or at least for the USL contracts and some of like the rookie MLS deals, part of the deal is free housing. So you can get paid a salary and then you also get housing on top of that. So yeah, I could have stayed in that house, but I just opted to stay with my aunt and uncle just because I thought it would be better, more comfortable, and to be with family was a cool opportunity.
Right on. So how was your experience with the USL team?
So it was cool. I mean, what was great about coming into the USL team is like I've been with the first team, and had been doing well. So I came in with like a bunch of confidence into the USL team. So that, I mean, I think it's a great sort of feeling to have when you just get somewhere new, and instead of feeling nervous or like, I don't know, am I good enough? Am I not? Like you were like, I know I'm good enough because I've just been playing and doing well at a higher level. So yeah, I think I came in, and this is obviously my own opinion of it, and I try to be as realistic as I can about myself, but I think like everybody, I have a tendency to like err on this, or maybe not everybody, but I like to err on the side of positivity, especially when I'm thinking about my performances. So yeah, I was like, I came in and did well. I mean, I did well enough where they wanted to sign me. And again, when you get to the USL team, there's 2 other goalkeepers who they have on trial who are trialists for the preseason. So even then, like, it's not like guaranteed or anything like that. So, but I like the competition. I like that element of it. Especially like goalkeeping, it's really interesting because you're super competitive with the guys who are at your position, but you also kind of have to have a really good relationship with them because you're working so closely together every day. Like I've been a part of teams where there's some beef or people who don't get along, and the training sessions are just so dysfunctional, and they're not what they could be. Because I think when everybody's sort of vibing and there's a mutual respect and professionalism, that's when things are at their best.
Yeah. And did you ever play in a professional game with the New York Red Bull too?
Yeah, so I played. So I signed in March, and then at that point, how it generally works is the third MLS goalkeeper comes down and plays USL games. So the person in my position is kind of the backup USL goalkeeper. But leading up to the first USL game, there'd been an injury in the first team, so everybody sort of gets bumped up. So then I got to start and play in the first game. So we played Tampa Bay Rowdies, and we lost 1-0. But I actually had a pretty good game, and that was really obviously big for my confidence, but also I felt good because I was like, I've kind of shown to them that like I can do the job if they need me to do it, which is a good feeling. And then obviously after that, like COVID sort of shut everything down, and we were at home for 2.5 months. So it was just kind of a long layoff, but it was nice to get that little bit of taste of the game sort of at the start.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What an experience.
Yeah.
New York
bro.
Red Bull 2 teams, or I would ask, teams in the USL, are they made up of younger players trying to break into the first team, or what is the makeup of players? Is it older players kind of on their way out? Is it younger players? What does it look like?
So if you're like an MLS affiliate, so like Red Bulls 2, Atlanta United 2, Sounders 2, etc., it's mostly young guys. So either guys out of college or even guys who they signed from the academy. Or guys on the academy who are amateurs still, but are just playing with the USL team. Versus like you have teams like Pittsburgh Riverhounds or Charleston or like trying to think, Tampa Bay is another good example. Those teams are older and more experienced, and those guys are like had played in the MLS for a while or have played a long time in the USL, so they're like 27, 28, 29, 30. So they're more experienced, and I don't know. A lot of times it felt like I was back in college playing this year because of the way the COVID was set up. We couldn't have any first-team players come down, because that's another thing that happens too is like guys who aren't getting first-team minutes come down and play games for the USL team to get 90 minutes, fitness, et cetera, and just playing games. But because of COVID, you couldn't really go back and forth. So we brought up a lot of academy guys to join us just to fill out our roster. Because I think Red Bulls 2 last year, they only had 10 guys signed to USL contract deals. So the rest of the roster for each game is filled out from either academy guys coming up or first-team guys coming down. But because of the situation, we had a lot of academy guys. So it was a really young group.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I was looking at the pictures, like obviously when we were setting this up, I was like looking through the New York Red Bulls 2 Instagram, and I saw a lot of young guys. And that's kind of when it started going through my mind. It's like, well, I didn't realize. I guess without knowing it, I kind of just assumed that they would be pulling up academy players, just so they can get minutes and kind of have that exposure.
Yeah, and definitely New York is like a team that prides themselves on developing homegrown players. Like, I mean, Tyler Adams is a big example of somebody who's come through like the academy, then Red Bulls 2, then the first team, and now obviously playing for Leipzig. But they put a lot of onus on getting young guys experience and then pushing them on to the first team and then even higher levels if they can.
Yeah, that's awesome. That must be exciting as a player, kind of going through that, you know?
Yeah, no, when I was involved with the club, it was great because I was like, look, I know that I'm young, but this is somewhere where they give guys opportunities when you're young. And I mean, obviously it's a bit different with goalkeeping just because goalkeepers as a whole are normally older. The guys who are playing and experience plays a big part of that. But I knew even still that like maybe my opportunities were going to be few and far between, but like I was going to have opportunities, and then it was kind of on me to do what I could with them.
It's interesting too with goalies is it's almost different than like a forward. Like the older they get, they start kind of declining. But as a goalie, the older you get, the better you get because you get better with experience. And you see that at the highest levels. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
That's very interesting. You mentioned a little bit off camera that you're going through free agency right now. You want to just talk about that?
Yeah. So like basically at the end of the year, the club. So I signed a 1+1. So it's a 1 year with a club option for the next year. And at the end of the year, you have meetings and stuff like that. And the club tells you we want to bring you back, or in my case, sorry, but we don't want to. So they didn't pick up my option, so I was released. So once you're released, you're a free agent. So yeah, the process has sort of been just like working with my agent who's been reaching out to teams on my behalf. And yeah, I mean, it's been a time to be patient for sure because with COVID, the market's a lot slower than it normally is. But luckily, I've been able to like get some traction going, and we have a couple of things we're working on. So I'm hoping to have things kind of wrapped up here sooner rather than later and have a spot to play next year. But,
were you super bummed out when they didn't choose to get the next year option, or were you kind of seeing it as like an opportunity to go somewhere else and kind of see some new things?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be totally honest. It's funny because like it took me a long time to sort of be honest with myself and honest with other people about how it went. And like I had a lot of opportunity to play in matches because of like the no first team players coming down, and I didn't play well enough. I didn't show enough. I mean, I think like it's a results driven profession, and I had been in a spot where like in college, I was kind of grooving it for 2 years where like everything was going well. I was doing well. The team was doing well. We were having like the best seasons in program history, stuff like that. And then, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of success over the first few months that I was there in preseason going into the first match. And then coming back after COVID, I was doing well, but then just sort of fell out of form for a while, made a few mistakes, which as a goalkeeper can be hard to come back from because like if I make a mistake, it becomes a goal pretty much every single time. And those are sort of high profile things and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it was hard, right? I think like I got myself into a spot where I was just concerned about feeling good for the next game. So every training session, I was like, all right, well, I got to do well. I want to be feeling good going into the game, which is okay, I guess. But I think for me, I missed out on a ton of learning opportunities, right? Like if I'm trying to be like, I'm not going to concede anything in training, one, that's kind of an unrealistic expectation. And two, I'm kind of putting blinders on myself where I'm not focusing on developing and making mistakes. Ultimately, like how you learn in training is by making mistakes. I think it's, at least for me, and I think for a lot of goalkeepers. So I sort of learned about myself, like where I can be most successful is where I have like my idea of success is that I'm learning. So if I save everything or concede everything, if I learn, then that's a successful day. So that's kind of what I learned throughout the process. But in it, I got to a point where I was like feeling like pretty bad about myself, pretty bad about how I was playing. And then it's hard too, right? Like I'm away from my family, I'm with my aunt and uncle and stuff like that. And it's great. They were a great support system, but still, I mean, I think everybody during this time has felt isolated to a certain degree, right? Not being able to see your friends and to get out and do stuff. So I struggled with that for sure. And it's interesting, like you don't necessarily realize you're headed to kind of a low sort of dark place until maybe you get there. So I got there and kind of had to like sort of claw my way out. But at that point, I think I hadn't done enough. And then I kind of got in a group towards the end of it, but they actually brought in a young goalkeeper from Italy at the end of the year, and he played the last few games. So the writing was kind of on the wall. Like,
Gotcha.
So I was just definitely disappointed that I was released, but I think holistically, like, and thinking long term, I got so much out of the year on a personal development and growth level that even though I didn't really have the most success, I'm set up really well to hopefully go somewhere else and be super successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in hindsight, obviously hindsight's 2020, but looking back, I'm sure you're a better player now than you were at the beginning, you know?
100%.
It's a huge plus. I think it's very interesting that you mentioned it was like a roller coaster of emotions, and every player feels it, you know? And like you say, it just, a lot of times it takes one mistake, and it's very hard to climb out of that hole. For players that kind of go through the same thing, what advice do you have for them to get out of that? Because a lot of players, it's a mentality thing. It's very much a mentality thing. You don't lose fitness. You don't lose your skill. It's a mental game, especially at that level. So what advice do you have for players that go through that same thing?
I mean, I would say even first, like if you're someone who's maybe doubting how much of a part mentality plays into it, if you look at your best performance ever and your worst performance ever, I'd be pretty confident to say that the difference was nothing physical. It's a total mental thing. Like you think about the time you were absolutely smashing it on cloud nine, and then think about when you're at your worst. I think for a lot of people, it's just a mental difference. Like that's the difference. So for one, that shows to me like the benefit of kind of working hard on that. And yeah, I mean, for me, one thing that I've done that's been really, really helpful has been meditation. So I like read a lot about it, read a lot about Buddhism, read a lot about different ways to practice it. But basically, like for me, meditation is a chance to practice, to become sort of aware of myself, right? Because I think like your brain is like the most powerful thing that you have. And you think about like what your brain can do. Like when you're dreaming, your brain is literally like manufacturing a totally new world for you to like enjoy while you're sleeping. But it can manufacture good things, and it can also manufacture bad things. And I think as your brain is like your most powerful instrument as you move through life, it's really important to be able to exercise some control over that. So for me, like my meditation practice and my sort of mindfulness practice throughout my day is trying to be like aware of why I'm doing things. And then, because it's crazy, like you do so many things and you're like, I don't know why I'm doing it, but you just do it. You don't even think about it. And sort of understanding that and like reaching a place where I can be really objective about things, which is not to say that I don't feel positive emotions or negative emotions, but like I can be objective in terms of how I see things and then try to react appropriately. But I guess that was kind of a long-winded answer. Just to answer your original question, like the advice that I'd give is to just like, to take it sort of day by day. I think it's great to have a long-term approach, but it's really important to switch back from long-term to short-term, depending on what you need, right? Like sometimes if you're sort of getting dragged down and like, I don't really want to be doing this or whatever, think about, well, if I keep doing this, then hopefully I'll be able to do this in the future. But sometimes you get caught up with like mistakes that you are making right now affecting your future. And you're like, you're missing out on the right now. And this is a thing that I read that I really, really like, is like the past and the present exist only in one place, and that's your mind. But the future, I botched it. You could have clipped that for the Instagram.
We'll cut it out, man. Don't worry about it.
Cut it out. The past and the future only exist in your mind. So how you think about what has happened and what will happen will happen. That's only for you. But the present, everybody's sharing that, everybody's reacting with it. So I think like to not get caught up too much on what has happened or what will happen, that can be really important too.
Damn, that's great advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice, and we'll cut out that first part so it looks
Or
good.
don't cut it. I mean, it's okay. I'm learning about this stuff, so that's the authentic me. I haven't nailed it down totally yet where I can get it every time.
I'm just teasing you. One thing that I did see that you just posted recently was that you were reading a book a week. How's that?
Yeah, so that was my goal for 2020
That's
that
insane.
I made back in January, was to read one book a week. And yeah, it was great. I mean, it's nice with COVID. Like I had a lot of extra time to read and stuff like that. And I ended up finishing a couple of months early. And so I think I'm at like 71 right now is what I'm reading.
Jesus
at the
Christ, dude. That's insane. I don't
Um,
even think I read a book a year.
Yeah, top 3 favorites books. Do you have a
Yeah,
list?
what would you recommend?
Well, it sort of depends. Like, I guess the book that I always recommend to people, or there's two books that I recommend. They're by the same guy. This guy's name is Greg Boyle, and they're called Tattoos on the Heart and Barking to the Choir. So Greg Boyle, he runs this thing called Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, which is like the largest prison rehabilitation like jobs program in the world. But he's also a Jesuit priest, so that's how he became involved in that community. He was preaching at a church in that area, and then through the church groups got involved in the community and ultimately created this thing, Homeboy Industries. But the books are about his experiences working with people through the program and what he learns from them. And so there's some amazing stories, some really, really sad stories, but there's also some great, like really heartfelt stories about human connection and stuff like that. So I always recommend that. Like I'm 100% on that recommendation. Like everybody who reads those books likes them. So hopefully I didn't just jinx myself. If anybody goes and reads them and doesn't like them.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he writes about, and I'm not for transparency, I'm not a super religious person, and he obviously has a religious background, but he writes about faith and spirituality in a way that's really accessible, no matter what faith you're a part of, and no matter what level you practice that faith. So those are two that I for sure
Awesome.
recommend.
And I mean, before we finish up, do you have any like future plans? What do you plan on doing after your career is done? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I think about it often. I mean, I think like as great as soccer is, like I had a coach tell me once, you can't eat soccer balls, and I was like, well, obviously you can't. But what he's trying to say is like eventually like the game stops for everybody, and I'd love to be involved in the game after I'm playing from a coaching perspective. I think like a cool thing about the goalkeeper and goalkeeper coach is like it's a pretty sort of intimate and tight relationship between the two, and like some of the people who've had the biggest impacts on me in a positive way have been former goalkeeper coaches of mine. So to be around in the game continually after you're playing, that would be cool, and then also to kind of develop those relationships is something that's pretty appealing about that. But I mean, like, it's just going to sound a little corny based on that I was just talking about books, but like one thing I'm really interested about is like actually becoming a librarian. Not just because I like books, but I think libraries are pretty cool because they're like one of the only places in our society where everybody's welcome. Like whether you have a library card or not, whether you're homeless or a millionaire, you can go to the library. And whether that's to read, to research, to check a book out, to get inside when it's warm and cold outside, to be able to use a bathroom when you don't have anywhere else to go. I think that's really, really cool that's a place that's there for everybody. And then the library also does so much more than just like books and DVDs or whatever. There's like ESL programs to help people like establish immigration status and stuff like that. All different kinds of ways that they are positive influences in the community. But it's also all sort of centered around learning, which for me, as I've said, is a really important thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
That's awesome, man.
Well, I mean, we basically talked about everything we wanted to talk about. Do you have any questions for us before we end?
Yeah, first, I want to know, like, how can I get some of that panaderia Rios that you guys are cranking out every day? Every time you put something up, it makes my tummy rumble. Those things look good.
Dude, just shoot me your address. We'll mail you some, bro. We'll send you
For
some.
real?
Yeah, absolutely. We
Bro,
did it
I will take you up on that.
to like my boss at the internship that I'm working with, and they loved it. You'd love it, man. You'd love it. This bread is special. I'm telling you, man. I'm
That's
selling
awesome.
it hard.
That's awesome. Okay,
yeah,
for
just
sure.
after, off camera, just send me your address, and then
Yeah.
I'll ship over. We're gonna make some tonight, actually. Makes them every
Oh,
week.
excellent,
So
bro.
expect it in
Excellent.
like a week.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I'm curious. Like, how did you guys get going on this podcast? Like, I've followed along a little bit, like on the Instagram, and you guys have had some really cool people on. Like, what made you guys want to do that?
Do you want to answer this, Gabe?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we kind of saw that there was something that our community lacked when we were growing up. We were both first generation college students, and growing up, we kind of didn't really have an idea of who can we go to for help if we have questions on certain things. We couldn't go to our parents because they had no idea how to help us on all these things. So we thought, okay, what's something we could do would be able to impact this community in a positive way and help those growing up, maybe give them a step forward. And we both just decided, like, hey, let's just start a podcast. We could bring on people from in the community and from outside of the community, kind of bring their knowledge and all kind of bring it in together. And just anyone listening could maybe get some an extra step forward, like I said, on moving forward with their career, with school, with sports, whatever it's going to be. But basically just like creating a platform so people can go to and get some advice and get some help.
Wow.
It was like
That's awesome.
creating like a solution to the problem that we had growing up, you know? And in our case, it was growing up with sports and growing up with a lack of an idea of what we wanted to do when we were older. And a guy we just had on, well, for us and me and Gabe, like I just mentioned, sports, soccer growing up. Well, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, when you're trying to pick an agency, you were talking to Quincy Amarikwa, you're talking to these players, these network of players that played at Davis that went through the same path you're about to go through. So you had help in that aspect. And me and Gabe growing up, we didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? So that would have, like, we kind of want to be that for people coming behind us. It's frustrating because we didn't have that and we kind of had to go through trial and error to get to where we're at. But at the same time, like, we can either be negative about it and pout, or we can be positive and try to provide that for other people. So in doing so, we're trying to provide a platform for people in our community to be able to like voice their experiences, whether they're positive or negative, and hopefully people take from that and learn from it. And from this experience, we've seen that people are taking advantage of it, you know? So it's very rewarding in that aspect. You know, people are reaching out to the guests we've had on and trying to pursue similar career paths, and that's awesome. And when we started it, it was something that we didn't expect, you know? Like, we just kind of wanted to just be something you see on the computer, and then it's like, okay, that's cool. Like, what are they up to? What are they doing now? But to be able to provide kind of like that resource for other people is something that's really, really rewarding for us. And we don't get anything out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't get any money out of it. We don't get anything out of it. But just to know that other people are watching us and then reaching out to people and then changing their life in a way has been awesome, dude. And then just to, because we're from a small town, so just to be able to like get your insight, dude. Like, you've never been to Fort Bragg. People don't know of you, but they see that you're a professional level player, and just to get your insight, your advice, everything, your story, the way you went about it, and then just bring that insight, that information, that knowledge back to Fort Bragg. Like, that's sick, you know? Like, that's a goal of ours, to just bring information from other people that we've met outside of this place and just bring it back to this community is another goal we have. But that's really the at the core, that's really why we started.
Wow. Well, first off, I mean, that's amazing. Like, what like a selfless and admirable thing to do, to like basically essentially pay it forward. And as you mentioned, like, you guys aren't getting anything out of it besides like the benefit of like feeling good about helping your community. So I think like if more people operated with that, there'd be a lot less problems in the world. And then also like secondly, you mentioned people reaching out to people who've come on. If you want to reach out to me, anybody who's listening, please do. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't get very many direct messages and check them all the time. So if you want to hit me up that way or whatever, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
We'll drop your tag at the bottom. And just something that Gabe mentioned last night, like, we did another podcast last night with the vice principal at the middle school here, and he just said after, like, we were just driving home, and Gabe was like, dude, like, this is so cool. Like, if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have caught up with them. Like, we hadn't seen him in a few years. And just same, like, we haven't talked in, like, chatted here and there. You know, I congratulated you when you made it, but we never sat down and had a conversation. The last time was like on the bus down to Los Angeles in that tournament.
Yeah.
You know? But it's just the opportunity to sit down and talk and catch up and see and learn things about you, and you learn things about us. Like, it's something that doesn't really happen too often now, you know?
100%, dude. I think everybody gets caught up in your own sort of day-to-day and you lose track of stuff. But yeah, bro, that's awesome. And I'll say this too, like, I think more and more, you guys will be surprised, like, even people outside of your community going to start benefiting from the resources that you're providing. I mean, I know I have, like, I really enjoy like following stuff, and you guys have really cool people on. So yeah, I mean, I guess thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Absolutely, man. It's been
Thanks
fun.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah,
man.
so
Awesome.
so we'll go ahead and end it here. Everybody, thank you so much for watching at home or listening. We'll catch you guys next week.